Big Book meeting is to read and study the first 164 pages of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, along with Dr. Bob's Nightmare. Our meeting runs to 8:30, and I'll open it up for questions and comments at that time. We also use the 12 and 12. Okay, so last week I left, yes.
Just a quick announcement, I was trying to get the date open.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
My whole group is Annabelle, and we're counting here, our group anniversary, also April 19th, it's the third Sunday of April, at 7 p.m. So actually, it's 6 o'clock, we're through the fellowship, maybe the call at 7.
We'll just keep our anniversary support group going. Thank you so much.
April what?
19th.
Okay.
April 19th, awesome. Okay, so last week I left you with step 8, and I don't really like to break up step 8 with step 9. And you're asked to go back into time and to thoroughly do a self-appraisal about the harms that it caused. And we talked about what kind of harms those were when we read that reading in step 8 in the 12 and 12. And when I did that, when I had to go back and I had to look at the relationship, my sponsor asked me to make sure that I was reviewing this relationship from the beginning. Because, everything starts out great. It's like a great, happy-go-lucky or loving. It depends upon the level of relationship. For most of them, like, where did it go wrong? Like, what happened? And I really had to take a good deep dive into what happened in this relationship. And in the what happening, the first time around, it was all about you did this and he did that. And I couldn't see where I was concerned anyway, especially some of them whatsoever. I really took a victim position, and I was really justifying my bad behavior against what had happened. And as we took a really good look at that, she asked me some very pointed questions in step 8. If you hadn't had a chance to do this, and you haven't completed this exercise, it was so thorough and absolutely blew me away. It was almost as bad as having to share my 5th step, which I feel should be called the throw-up step, really. When you're absolutely revealing in this soul surgery, they call it, what really happened. But in step 8, she asked me 3 very important questions. She said, where did I evoke jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness? Where did I evoke it? And I had to stop and think about that. And that includes things like being sarcastic and, making a point. And I started to really see that my husband was getting annoyed at me because I would just goad it. And I'd say, oh, I'm out for a little while. He'd say, how long? I'd say an hour, and 4 hours later, 5 hours later, I'd show up and he's a nervous wreck. And I am not respectful of the position he had. So I started to see where I did things like that. Wasn't on time, dismissed the fact that, I make an appointment and I'm a half hour late. People are sitting there waiting for you. Like, they get annoyed, right? And I couldn't, I called or something like that. So I was justifying inconveniencing you. Those are just some minor examples. But what it did was it truly opened up a pattern of selfish and self-centered behavior that I had with these relationships that I had a resentment against and it caused a harm towards. And I started to see what I could do differently. So immediately I was getting the relief of the truth. It was like immediately, because on page 77, as it's talking about step 8 and moving into step 9, it gives us a tremendous direction. This is profound, actually. It's telling him that our real purpose of doing any of this work is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. My perspective didn't have anything to do with that order. It had to do with, I'd like you to fit yourself into my agenda. And to turn it around, the turnaround in step 8 has that I fit myself in your agenda. That I'm able to fit according to life on life's terms, not life on life's terms according to me. And that was always a rub. There were many times that I was really uncomfortable. Now I could start to see why. So this 8th step reveal showed me exactly where the relationship went wrong, what I did, and so I was very clear on what needed to be discussed. Then my sponsor took that list and, we made the cards. Bobby talked about that last week. We had to identify, could I do this now, later? My never on this planet list, and they stayed there. my never on this planet list. It took a while before I could approach some of those harms done, both things I had done and things that were done to me. It just took a while, and our book tells us, just be willing. Because I was willing to put down on the paper certain things that had happened, events started to unfold. You know, we're here in step 8 where we're starting to live a spiritual life. So God's kind of working in our life. And if we've taken the time and asked for that, I start to see things I never saw before. My life becomes a little more clear and I'm more relaxed. So I'm starting to see things like I never saw them before. So people are interested in seeing you as a demonstration of goodwill, it says. But, you know, it takes time. You know, my family wasn't too agreeable. Maybe that's not the right word, but they say it was like a test. Okay, well, like you're good like this today, you're going to be good like this tomorrow. You know, well, maybe, because, you know, I was like Jekyll and Hyde. You're good like this until it became stable. And then they started to trust again. When people started to trust me, it blew me away. And today it's so different. But it's this practice of really looking at what had happened and owning that, taking full accountability for the things I understood. And sharing on my sponsor, you have to do this with the sponsor because she had insight into the way I behaved, thought, acted that I never saw before. So it was clear I would enable bad behavior and I would be bad behavior, you know, and she sort of straightened that out for me so we could walk forward into this next part, which is making these amends. I had the direction, and I firmly believe in the direction, that if I created the amends face-to-face, I make the harm face-to-face, I make the amends face-to-face. There's no wiggle room here. You know, and today, you know, when they were reading the traditions of press, radio, and films, we need to add text, email, other ways of communication because a lot of harm is done on Facebook and in emails. A lot of harm to people. There's no defense. You know, people just think, oh, I got to tell my truth. Well, you sometimes get an email and do one of these, right? And still that kind of an amends needs to be done face to face because you have no idea what's going on with that person on the other side. So we're going to go on in the big book a little bit tonight to talk about this because there's, believe it or not, there's 166 directions on step 9. Can you believe it? I never looked at it that way until it was pointed out to me. And I'm like, that's way too many for a person like me. So my sponsor said to me, listen, you got to do something very important here at step 8. You've got to bring yourself, and she took her hand like this, and she said, bring yourself back to center, ask, God, what would you have me be? It works every time. And you get clear on the truth you need to see. Bring me back to center. Because your ego does not want you to do this work. You'll get lots of excuses like, you didn't have to say it to them, oh, that didn't really happen, or you can minimize it, but you're going to feel the rumble in your stomach. You're going to feel, you know, it's like, oh man, I got to do something, I don't know how to do something. Make sure you're communicating that with the people, your trusted network. So it goes on to say in the middle of page 77 that we don't use this as an excuse from shying away from the subject of God. Some people get really freaked out when you use the God word. And our literature has it all over the place. So if it's God, if it's Buddha, if it's spirit of the universe, I don't care. But whatever it is for you, don't be afraid to talk about it. If it comes up, don't be afraid to talk about it. There is no way that I could be the person I am without the spiritual guidance of a higher power. There's absolutely no way. Left to me, I'm back on page 62. Left to me, selfish and self-centered is the root of my troubles, and I am driven by self to solve my problems. When a higher power is involved in my life, suddenly it changes, and I'm open-minded enough to see you first. I start to see you. I start to see how you feel, what happened to you before what happened to me. And I'm much more willing to stay in that humility, in that humble place. Humility is so necessary here, as is discipline. So it goes on to say, the question of how to approach the man we hated arises. That always comes up. I can never do that. I hate that dude. There's no way I'm going there. And I'm going to say to you, yes, there is, but it might not be today. Yes, there is, but there might not be today. And if you back it up and go into the story of what happened from beginning to end, you can see where your part of it might have inflated it, might have not put enough emphasis on it. Maybe it is somebody that we can't see face to face, and there are other ways of taking care of it. But there's always, in our directions right here, there's always a way to handle every situation, every single one of them. Okay, so it says, he has done us more harm than we have done him. And although we may have acquired a better attitude towards him, we're still not too keen about admitting our faults. That happens a lot. I grew up in a very abusive family system. That's what I'm going to call it. I'll just call it the family system. And that's how I learned how to deal in relationships. So not only was I from it, I also created it. So I hated this back here. And I had to go back there. And adult children and Al-Anon and other programs really helped me to face what was going on, because deep underlying attitudes, ideas, and emotions were stuck in the pain of that. But the story helped to open it up to the place where it was safe to talk about. And it took time for me to get to the place where I was able to go face some of that. So that might happen for you too. It happened for me. But it tells us, if you notice, it just says, just keep willing. There's no timeline here. Just be willing. It took me a long time to make the amends I had to make. Started out early, I could do the ones that were really necessary, but the real deep-rooted stuff took a long time. It took willingness, it took honesty, it took, okay, I'll try it out. And as one fear was faced about that, realizing it was quite unreasonable, by the way, they fell. And I was very willing to go see these. So far, there's none on my list. I'm 30 years sober, though, so it's taken a long time. And as they crop up, as I uncover something, oh my God, I gotta go take care of that. Now I will, because I don't want the life I had before. Okay, so it goes on to say, it's harder to go to an enemy than a friend, so we call them frenemies. You're gonna go to a frenemy someday. You will. You'll be able to see them as we see them. But we find it much more beneficial to us. We'll go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill willing and expressing our regret. Now, forgiving spirit doesn't mean anything then. It's our willingness to be free. Forgiving spirit, I don't want this harm to rule me anymore. I want to be free from the harms that happened to me and the harms I've done to others. So forgiveness is not about condoning. Forgiveness is all about freedom. It's freedom from those memories. And soon I can tell you what happened to me here. Soon it was like those memories didn't rule me anymore. So I wasn't stuck in the fear of not moving forward in that area of my life. I wasn't afraid because I knew it would be okay. So experience is going to show you through this book that it showed me that I have to have a forgiving spirit. Sometimes it was me holding on to a harm that was 30 years old. That's not what life is today, and we'd have to come back right here, right now, what's going on. I was holding on to old stuff. It wasn't even true. And then, I don't know about you, but I kind of embellished the memories, if you know what I mean. And they were bigger than they were, and then some that needed to be big were small. So that's why another reason you need a sponsor. And here is a guidance. Under no condition do we criticize a person or argue. How many times do you even walk into a recovery room, whether it's Al-Anon or AA, and feel judged? I have, many times. And I'll tell you that you probably are being judged. And that's how it feels, So we have to be very careful of our motives and our actions here. That under no condition do we criticize a person or argue. We let them talk. What I found too in those amends is that I wasn't hearing people. I didn't hear you when you spoke. And most of those were about is they wanted to be heard. So I had to develop rapt attention. I had to develop the skill of really listening to you when you spoke. Simply tell them that we'll never get over drinking until we've done our utmost to straighten out the past. I don't necessarily ascribe to that direction, by the way. I think what that sentence does, and this is just an opinion, sometimes we need to say that, but this is an opinion, that I think it puts a person on the defensive, that if they don't listen to you and they don't want to hear you through, that they think you're going to drink if they don't listen to you. So I think it puts them on the defensive. So I don't say that. We're there to sweep off our side of the street because we recognize that there's things that we need to do. We might have stolen their emotional security. You know, we might have harmed them in many different ways. So realizing nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. Never trying to tell him what he should do, another direction. We never try to tell anybody what they should do. And they're going to come out. I don't know, some of my amens were really interesting. When I asked that question, is there anything I left out? They said, you certainly have. You know, and I had forgotten that. So I was able, though, because it was thorough and I knew exactly why I was there, to listen to what they had to say. And here's the best thing that I ever learned how to say for my sponsor. She said, that must have been awful for you. I am so sorry. And it cleared it up. I heard what that person had to say to me, honored the fact that my actions harmed them, and said, is there anything I can do to make that right for you? I'm not kidding. It is like a holy experience, right? His faults aren't discussed. We stick to our own. And then here's another direction for us. This is a condition that we need to be able to walk in amends with. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we'll be gratified with the result. I do not have one amends that wasn't worthwhile. Not one. They were thorough, they were honest, they were clear, they were concise, and they were complete. And when you write those cards with the direction of your sponsor, believe me, they'll make it complete with you. So that's why you need somebody who's done the work. Here it goes. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. I will say that 10 times out of 10. 10 times out of 10. The unexpected happens. Sometimes the man we're calling upon admits his own fault. Maybe, maybe not. And I'm going to give you an example of how it took 20 years for one to happen until I heard it back the other way. So feuds of standing melt away in an hour. This is a promise. Next, rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. You walk out of that and you feel a little clearer because you're getting a little freer. Your spirit is getting free. And I promise you, that's how you feel. I'm going to say never do we fail to make progress when we do that, when we face the truth. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we're doing and wish us well. Sometimes they call you the bitch of the universe. That's okay. That's how they feel. But I know that I told them the truth, right? So occasionally they'll offer assistance. It shouldn't matter. However, if someone does throw us out of his office, so it might happen. You might be told, listen, I don't want to see you. And we find another way to make that right. We'll find another way, right? We've made our demonstration, done our part. It's water over the dam for us. It's not water over the dam if you leave and you keep repeating the same thing over, then there's more work to do. Maybe there's more inventory. Maybe there's more to the story that you haven't resolved. So if you walk out of there feeling that way, we need to talk some more. That's all. So many alcoholics, now we're going to move on to money. Many alcoholics owe money. We don't try to dodge our creditors, telling them what we're trying to do. We make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. We're so arrogant, we don't think anybody realizes what we're up to. And they're like, you are so transparent, you have no idea. Right? It's just like when we come here, you don't know how sick you are and everyone else does. Same thing with money. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. You know, we think of all kinds of excuses not to handle this, and we have to handle it. First of all, you owe the universe back the money you took away from it. And the more you do that, the more you get over here. It's like really crazy cool. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we're sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. And here's another direction. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go, for we're liable to drink if we're afraid to face them. So we're putting that situation in the future, usually when we have that condition. Usually it's about something, well, if I do that, then that's going to happen, and we're just being a fortune teller. Right, Sarah? Fortune tellers. You know, we try to figure it out before we're there. Saying, don't do that. We must lose our fear of creditors. What are they going to say? No? How many times have you heard no? What are they going to say? Well, let's see if we can work something out. When they hear the sincerity in your voice, 9 times out of 10, they'll work something out with you. It says, perhaps we have committed a criminal offense, which may land us in jail if we're known to authorities. If you come to me and there's a criminal offense involved, now I have to tell you something about a sponsor relationship, and you start to tell me that story, I might say to you, you know, let's stop right there, let's get an attorney. Because if they come to me and call me into court, I got to tell them what you told me. And I don't want to be in that position. And I have stopped people, and I said, right here, right now, we're going to call somebody that you can talk to. Because I don't want to be in the position to violate the sacred space that you and I have with this process. So I'll stop you and take you to somebody who will help you so that I don't have to be part of that. It should, heaven forbid, something happen. I was part of it once. And I learned my lesson, and I didn't get the correct guidance from my sponsor. I don't think I even told her actually it was going on, so I shouldn't say that. She didn't have the opportunity to guide that. So I'm really careful when we talk about this part. So if there's a criminal offense, I'm not talking traffic tickets, I'm talking other stuff. Traffic tickets, I'm not going to get in trouble for that. But there are situations that we need an attorney to help us, who will guide us into making the correct decision. And I have several that are, in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and will help us. They understand what we're doing. They understand what we're trying to do. I have friends that have been here who have gone back to the place where the criminal offenses has happened, and they went back, they walked into court. Oh, we dismissed that years ago. You're free to go. Other hand, put the cuffs on them and they're in jail. I mean, it depends what the situation is. But we're very careful here in Alcoholics Anonymous to guide you. So if you come with a situation to someone like me or someone who has completed the work, they'll probably do the same thing with you. So that's good, though. Good to know, right? You can mention it. You say, hey, this is going on. Do I need to get an attorney? And they'll ask a few questions. They'll say yes or no, right? We may be short on our accounts and unable to make good. You can always give them $1. And that's what we'll do. We can always find $1. We can always find a cause. We can always find a mission. I had a friend of mine, and she used to work for the store. I might have mentioned this. She worked for a store, and she stole from the store. Shoes, clothes, what. So we found, and this place had gone out of business. The store had gone out of business probably because of her. I don't know. But so we found a mission. We found a nonprofit who clothed and put shoes on people who were homeless. So she gave the amount of money we figured out to that cause, and she sent them. She started out with $1, then it went to $5, and she was given a donation until she made that amount up. So there's always a way to make it right. Okay, so we admitted this in confidence to another person, but we should be in prison or lose our job if it were known. I can guarantee you that God is overseeing all of this. So if that happens, it happens, but we will help you to make the decision so you can be free. The whole deal is to be free. Maybe it's only a petty offense, such as passing the expense account. Most of us have done that sort of thing. Maybe we're divorced and remarried, but haven't kept up on alimony to number 1. I wish I had gotten alimony. She's indignant about it, has a warrant out for our arrest. It's a common form of trouble too. So although we'll tell you that the guidance that comes from a sponsor is not legal, it's not marital, it's not any of that, we can guide you to a person that's going to help you with that. It says, although reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles, and here comes some more guidance, right, for us, that we find guiding, reminding ourselves, and this is really important, and I bring this up to the women I sponsor all the time. We've decided to go to any length to find a spiritual experience. That was another way of wording. Have you decided to go to any length for victory over your alcoholism? Just another way of saying it. It appears 5 times in our book. So it's telling us right here, go to any lengths. Are you willing to go to any lengths for that spiritual experience? If not, we're going to back you up. I'm going to back you up down to step 2 and to step 4, what isn't told, till you get comfortable with the story to say, yeah, you know what, I really do want to be free of that. Willingness is the key. Willingness is always the key. And humility is the foundation step of all of the rest of these steps. So then it tells us, if we've agreed to that, we ask, here's the prayer, that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we're willing, we have to be. We must not shrink at anything. And my experience in this is the guidance with my sponsor and the way it was presented. I didn't have to shrink. My reputation wasn't harmed. In fact, I left in better light than I came in. We were able to come to a resolution about what happened in the past, for them and for me, each and every time. It says, usually, however, other people are involved. Therefore, we should not be too hasty or foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. Here's the example I'm going to give you. So I had some friends, early recovery, I think I'm now 5-6 years sober. That was my early recovery, and we were working on this step. And one of my neighbors came into Alcoholics Anonymous, knew him well, knew his family well, knew his wife well, and he had just come back from treatment. While in treatment, it was disclosed that he was quite the womanizer. I'm going to just say it like that. So he decided on his own that he was going to tell his wife this whole bit of affairs. Oh my God, it caused so many problems for him. It harmed her unnecessarily. So if that is, so we have to be very careful about what we're going to see. So you say, my truth needs to be told. Well, wait a second. It has to be tempered with prudence. It has to be tempered with consideration of the person involved. So let's say there is something like that where there's an extramarital affair or I cheated on somebody. It's not necessarily the solution to go to that person because other people are involved. The children are involved. In many cases, it's the children that got harmed in all of this. So we have to be very careful about how we do it, which is why, once again, we need a sponsor. And here's an example. A man we know had remarried. Because of his resentment and drinking, he had not paid alimony to his first wife, and she was furious. She went to court, got an order for his arrest, had commenced our way of life, had secured a position, was getting his head above water. It would have been impressive heroics if he walked up to the judge and said, here I am. Instead, he contacted her and said, look, I'll do this going forward, and that was how they resolved it. You know, we thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. So in the black and white, it says to do this, but in the gray of life, I beg you to work out each situation with your sponsor. He said he would try to do that in the future. I had that with my ex. You know, putting him in jail would have hurt my kids. Okay, page 80. Before taking drastic action which might implicate other people, here are the 4 things that you need to do. The 4 things. You obtain permission. It could be as simple as, hey, do you have time for a cup of coffee? Right? Consulted with others. That means that you've checked this all out with your sponsor, read your script, what are you going to say, how are you going to say it. Here was my response on the first one. I was first go at this, and she goes, oh, please do not go. You are not ready. Get rid of that tone, you know, stuff like that. Ask God to help. Ask God to help. That should probably be the first, but here's lesson number 3. And the drastic step is indicated we must not shrink. So if it's determined that now's the time, just go for it. This brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from the bitterly hated business rival, giving him no receipt for it. He subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as a basis for discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. I can think of some things when I set up people and destroyed their reputation. And I had to go make that right. You know, I can translate this into something that happened for me. Did I do something like that? Did I set somebody up and thereby ruin their reputation? By gossip, by cheating, by stealing? Did that happen? And if so, I need to go make that right. So, you know, we have to work through a whole list of bad behaviors. Alcoholism causes us not to act in integrity, right? So that's how we have to look at that. And that's how I would interpret that paragraph for those who think that, nah, I didn't do that. But there's something in there that we all did. He felt he had done a wrong he could not possibly make right. He decided he couldn't make it right. Who helps us decide? God does, right? A higher power will make all things right. And all things are possible through that power, right? If he opened that old affair, he was afraid it would destroy the reputation of his partner, disgrace his family, take away his means of livelihood. He had it all figured out, right? So here's another example of, I have it all figured out, which is why I can't do it. So if you're working with the sponsor's going to say to you, let's talk about that some more, right? Let's talk about that some more. Because you figured it out based on what you know and what you believe. And if your belief is there's no way to make this right, then maybe we need a new perspective of looking at it. That's all, right? So what right had he devolved those dependents upon him? How could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? However, after consulting his wife and partner, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his Creator guilty of such ruinous slander. He followed the directions. He did the inventory. He looked at the situation from beginning to end. He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands. So here it is with every single amends you take. And you make the decision that needs to be made. You place the outcome in God's hands. Or he would soon start drinking again and all would be lost anyhow. So we have a choice. We don't make these amends, we're not going to feel right about ourselves. So there's a choice that happens as we're moving along in the work, right? He attended church for the first time in many years, and after the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. His action was met with widespread approval, and today he's one of the most trusted citizens in his town. This all happens years ago. So the way you make the amends, the manner, the tone you use, the words you choose, all matter. You know, my sponsor taught me about the script. What are you going to say? How are you going to say it? Where are you going to meet this person? I'll wait in the car for you. And she did. We would drive together and she'd wait for me to come out. And we'd talk about it. I mean, I had total 100 support for the amends process because I was so scared to even try to do this. But if we don't do it, we're going to drink again or we're going to think again and end up where we were. I don't want to go back there. So, you know, you need the support of your people. Okay. So the chances are that we have had domestic troubles. Who hasn't, right? If we say we haven't, you're lying. Well, let's go talk about that. Perhaps we're mixed up with women in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt if in this respect alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people. We aren't. We are driven by self to a level that other people, normal people, are not. But we all sometimes get off the beam. But drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful and uncommunicative. How could she be anything else? I know that place. I was that place. Or if you're the kid, if you're a child of an alcoholic, you get worn out. You get resentful. You get uncommunicative. You get, what did you tell me it was? Oppositional
Defiance disorder?
Yeah, you get that. You start to get out of line. You start to behave. You get controlling, and you're looking at your kid going, what's wrong with you? You know, we come here with so many things out of sorts. We're out of balance, and it's not going to happen overnight. So I came with this, and then I married the same thing. So I was really confused as to what is the appropriate behavior. I had no appropriate behavior guidelines. I had to learn them. I had to learn them here. I didn't realize that the resentment and the lack of communication, also known as silent scorn, was that. I didn't know that it came from a place of pain. I didn't know it came from a place that if I say anything, you're going to hurt me, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And then that started lying by omission. That started not taking accountability. That started, I had to go get what I needed, so I thought. And I did. It wasn't pretty, right? So the husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself, or the wife, or the girlfriend, or the boyfriend, or the kid, commences to look around at the nightclubs or the equivalent for something besides liquor. Those needs need to be met. Remember when we were doing between 3 and 4, and we were looking at the instincts of life that drive us. And if our need for companionship is out of whack, we're going to do stuff like this. If our ambitions are out, our plans for having a family or for having trust within a family is out of whack, we're going to go do something. We have to have those needs met. The way we know how to meet them is not so pretty, right? Most of the time they're not so, I would say, on the best of us. But this is going to make it right for all of us. But we have to be willing to really divulge all of what really happened so you can be free from that. I had to learn that men are waffles and women are spaghetti. I love that analogy. Polly Pistol taught me that. She said, you know, men work out of waffle squares and women are like spaghetti. A man's going to be inside his little waffle square doing nothing, perfectly content with nothingness. A woman's going to be over here as spaghetti going, what are you doing? Nothing. That's my fault. Why is it my fault? What are you doing? Come on, talk to me. All they want to do is be nothing and watch the game. Right? Man's going to say to me, I need directions to get to that house, and here's my spaghetti mind. It's going, oh yeah. So you go down the corner, you turn left at the yellow house. And then right at the big oak tree, I was about down the road about a half mile or so. And he's like, what? I need a GPS map. Give me a map. I don't think like a map. So I had to begin to understand how you thought. I had to meet you where you were at, not me where I'm at. I expected that you understood my spaghetti brain, while I did not understand your waffle square. Right? I mean, that's a really simplistic description of communication, but I didn't understand that. I didn't get it, so I would force myself trying to find out how to communicate, and when you didn't respond, I would take actions accordingly. They were many, none of which were probably good for either of us. So there's a resentment, and there was the lack of communication. So I began to understand I had to hear you. I had to have rapt attention. But this is step 9. We're working on this now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 6 and 7, 6 and 7, 6 and 7, 8. Oh my God, I don't listen. Oh my God, I'm thinking of me first. Oh my God. So I'm working on this, and now I'm really seeing it, putting it into action. I couldn't believe this when she pointed this out to me. So what did you do? I split. I'll see you later. I left. I just walked out. And then he's like, I'm just in my waffle, watching the game. What's wrong with you? Right? Sometimes it wasn't quite that simple, and it was something he was doing, but he didn't understand me spaghetti. So you know what I'm saying? But I have a responsibility to go to any length for victory over alcoholism. I have agreed to have a spiritual experience to stop me from ever wanting to have a drink again. So because I made that deal with my God, I'm going to find a way to communicate. And God let me learn that. And it wasn't that painful. It was like, oh, I didn't see it that way. My sponsor developed with me a new perspective for looking at this. I started to see things from an entirely different angle, right? So this is what started for me. So I just thought of the waffle square thing because I just laughed when we figured that out. Perhaps he's having a secret, exciting affair with the girl who understands. Oh yeah, get a phone call like this. Hey Karen, do you know where your husband is? And I'm like, not really. Well, I do. Click. What do you do with that? I was a little mad, right? Okay, so in fairness, we must say that she may understand, but what we're going to do about a thing like that? Well, what I did wasn't too nice, you know. I found a detective, and I just took action into my own hands. But underneath it all, I'd pushed that guy out of my life, and that was the truth. So a man so involved often feels very remorseful at times, and boy, did I make him feel that. Especially if he's married to a loyal and courageous girl, who's like gone through hell with you. You know, I made him know that too, but I had a part to play in that. So it tells us, whatever the situation, we usually have something to do about it. Something. We have something involved. If you're in relationship, somebody will say to me, I'm not in relationship with that person. I said, well, you're telling me about it, you're in relationship. It might be all in your head, but you are in relationship. We are in relationship. All of us are in relationship on a physical and spiritual plane. We're in relationship with each other. So we must find a way to get along. So if we are sure our wife doesn't know, should we tell her? Not always, we think. If she knows in a general way that we've been wild, should we tell her in detail? Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. That's going to be between you and your sponsor. I'm going to tell you that in my case, sometimes yes and sometimes no. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She will want to know the woman who she was and where she is, like that phone call. I found out though. I got a detective. That was wrong, by the way. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We're sorry for what we have done, and God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further. This is about you. It's so hard to just take it from your perspective, which is once again why you need a sponsor. Although there might be some justifiable exceptions, though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we've often found this the best course to take. I think they just put that in there to make people feel better. There's no justifiable reason. Our design for living is not a one-way street. It's as good for the wife as it is for the husband. So it's as good for you as it is for your sponsee. It's as good for you as it is for your kids. It's not a one-way street. So here's a really good example. So I make my amends to my daughter. And I work real closely with that because she was the oldest of these kids and was crazy. It was crazy. And so I sit with her and we talk about it, and she tells me all these other things. Is there anything I left out? Oh, yes. And we went through all of that, and then I proceeded to do what I never knew how to do, and that was how to be a mother. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to be a mother. So I was learning through AA, the friends, people, my sponsor told me how to do this. She was 11 when I came into AA, and she was 14 when I finally did my men's with her. And, it was twisted. So little by slowly, that relationship got better and better and better. 5 years later, it's Christmas time. It's Christmas Eve. We just had a beautiful dinner. We're sitting around, we're talking, and she pops up and she said, yeah, I remember what Christmas Eve used to look like. And she went into this whole huge, horrible scene. And when she finished, though, because this way of living is not a one-way street, I was good. I said to her, honey, is that how it is for you today? I made my demonstration. I changed. I did everything that I could possibly do. I never did what I did before from that day forward. And she said, no. And I said, sweetheart, the resentment's on you. And she just looked at me. She said, I guess it is. And I said, we don't live like that anymore. I am so sorry you had to have that experience. I honored her place right then. She wasn't able to let go of it. But it's our responsibility when somebody comes back to us that we honor what it must have been like for them. Since that day, our relationship has just grown and grown and grown. It's beautiful today. But had I said, what are you talking about, and had the defense, I don't have the defense because we took care of this. Did she get into a little bit of recovery? She did. So she went to Al-Anon for a while. She's in and out of Al-Anon. She belongs in DA. I shouldn't say that. If we can forget, so can she. I never forget anything, by the way. They say forget. I don't think we can forget some of this stuff. So what we do is the set-aside prayer. We set it aside. If it pops up, we ask God to bring us back to the truth. We ask for forgiveness for bringing up a harm that we haven't forgiven for ourselves, and we move along. Do you ever forget? Oh, no, I don't have that kind of mind. Have I forgiven? To the best of my ability. Something pops up and I'll go, ooh, a little more work to do there. Right? And that's what that indicates. It says it's better, however, that one does not needlessly name a person upon whom they can vent jealousy. Jealousy is another issue. Perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. No outsider can appraise such an intimate situation. It may be that both will decide that the way of good sense and loving kindness is to let bygones be bygones. Now, some people use this as an excuse not to do this work at all. So they've taken it out of context and moved it to the beginning of this chapter. I'm just going to tell you that if you're with me, you're moving it back here. Each might pray about it, having each one's happiness uppermost in mind. Keep it always in sight that we're dealing in the most terrible human emotion, jealousy. And it'll rise up. You'll suddenly be sitting there going, why do they have that? Why am I doing this work and they're not doing this work? How come you're going off on some kind of role? Share that thought. Don't stay there. Good generalship may decide that the problem be attacked on the flank rather than risk face-to-face combat, and that might be so. That means that you're going to do it in a different way. You need a new perspective to deal with that. But if you feel jealousy and envy rising up, please don't just stuff it back down. There's a lot of stuff underneath that. Probably a harm and a need not met that you've given an assignment to somebody to meet. You have to talk about it. If we have no such complication, there's plenty we should do at home. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. I'm here to tell you that's not so. Certainly he must keep sober, for there'll be no home if he doesn't. But here it is. He's yet a long way from making good to the wife, the children, or parents whom for years he has shockingly treated. This is a lifelong job. Another word for this place in our book is living amends. That we live what we say we're going to do. We demonstrate to another person that our word is now good again. That we are here for you. That we're not disappearing. That we're reliable. Right? Passing all understanding is the patience of mothers and wives who have had with alcoholics. Had not this been so, many of us would have had no homes today and perhaps be dead. Can you relate a story or two here? I think about that. Mothers have patience of saints. We always see the best in our kids, as our mothers saw the best in us. Take advantage of us? Oh my God, do they ever take advantage of us? Because they know you're not going anywhere. You're going to love them anyway. And then you hit a day or a moment that you say, you know what? I can't do it like this anymore. And it has to change. And you feel so guilty and shameful for even having uttered those words about your kid. Say, listen, I'm not doing it like this anymore. And you got to go. I had to do that with my husband. It came to this point. It took a long time where I had to say, you know what, I'm kind of done. And it might be to a wife, a spouse, a husband, a daughter, a sister, a brother, a friend, a sponsee. You can only do it for so long. So know it's okay, but know that your motives must be very clear about doing this. Otherwise, you will walk with shame and guilt, and that's not what this is about. Okay, so here we go. The alcoholic is like, here's a tornado story. Like a tornado roaring through the lives of others. We don't even see anybody else. We have no impact, no idea of the impact of our behavior on another person. We just keep going. And then somebody looks at you and goes, what are you doing? And we say, oh, nothing, I'm fine. Sometimes we forget about that hearts are broken and sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. Sometimes, when you experience this, you become this, or sometimes you experience this and go underground with it, and that's where you stay. No, not meant to live the life. So as an active alcoholic, if these things were part of what happened, it's so important that we go and we straighten that out. For the other person, they didn't do anything. They're trying to help. Imagine. So we feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough, right? He's like the farmer who came up out of the cyclone cellar to find his home ruined, and his wife remarks, said, don't see anything the matter here, Ma, ain't it grand, the wind stopped blowing? It's like delusional thinking, right? Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. This is where it gave me the right to really take my time. Necessary, yes. Changing behaviors, yes. Long period of reconstruction ahead. Some relationships take time to repair, and some aren't repaired. Some just simply aren't. But most of them are. We must take the lead. That means it's up to us to be the example, to be the demonstration. A remorseful mumbling that we're sorry won't fill the bill. They're sick of them anyway. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it. Being very careful not to criticize them. Here it is again. We don't criticize or judge. We don't criticize and judge each other in these rooms at Alcoholics Anonymous and in Al-Anon and adult children. No criticism or judgment. If you find that's what you're doing, you need to do an inventory. It's the truth, right? Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. Notice it doesn't give percentages here. It doesn't say 50-50, 80-20, 90-10. Partly responsible means, did I play a part in this? Usually we did. So we clean house with the family. Asking, here's another prayer, another direction. Asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. Right? The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it, and that's in italics. Unless one's family expresses the desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not urge them. I don't go in preaching anything. I'm just the demonstration. And I can tell you over and over why just being a demonstration of the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, it has brought peace and calm and serenity to my family. They don't know. They don't want to know. They don't want to do it. They don't want to come. They don't want to celebrate. They don't want to do anything. All they know is that I'm not the person I was, and that's good enough for them. They also know they send their friends. They come. They see things differently than they ever saw before. When my dad passed away last March, and I went out to Wisconsin, my network's here. It's like, so I was out there, and my family are active alcoholics in desperate need of this chair. Here, right here. In this room right here, right now, today. And being a demonstration of who I am in Alcoholics Anonymous brought a calmness, and it was commented on, and I don't even know that that's what happened, because that's not because of me. That's because the spiritual life is not a theory. And we've rekindled some friendships. It's like really interesting. It says, we should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time, right? They see it in you. We take the lead. They'll do it themselves. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember another direction, that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness will make a skeptic out of anyone. Like we don't forget, they don't forget. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. Many times I'll have my sponsees write a letter to that person that they can't see and put it, just pick a spot in your big book and stick it in there. Time will come when that will be done. Right? We send them an honest letter. We sent them an honest letter. We just didn't have an address, so we put it in the big book. Follow? It works. It just works every time, right? And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible. Here's more directions. I love this. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile and scraping. Meaning that story I told you about my daughter, the line that goes through my mind when I tell you that story was the one my sponsor told me. She said, you only have to pay the electric bill once. So if you've gone to them and you've completed your amends and it keeps being brought up, you've paid the electric bill once. And that's on them. You can honor it and say, I'm so sorry. That must have been awful for you. And then be the demonstration of what you said you are. Okay. So it says, as God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. You know, we stand tall. Come off the cross. You don't have to be there anymore. You know, you're right here, right now. And then it's going to give us these fantastic 9-step promises. You know, and I can tell you the experience for, how many of you have completed your 9-step amends? Okay. So those that are in the middle of it, you're going to get parts of this. You're going to have experiences with what we're about to read, and they read them at a lot of meetings. But you will get the fullness and the richness of this when they're completed. It is so rich, it's like fireworks of 4th of July. You feel so different, and a huge shift begins to change for you in total at the end of the 9-step amends. But you will be experiencing them along the way, so I hope you have them. It says if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, this is 8 and 9, this is the phase they're talking about, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. I know when I started writing that 8-step list, I started to feel the relief. I really felt the relief when the amends started to happen. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. I couldn't believe how I was driven differently to do different things. I wasn't afraid to go anywhere. A level of happiness, didn't know about that word before. I thought it was really up to you to provide it for me. So I found it within, right? It says, we'll not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend, I'll understand the word serenity, because that peace and serenity inside is like magic. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. And today I can see that. I can see how what happened to me and the process that we did, our experience, strength, and hope, helps others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. I'm suddenly thinking of you, not me. I suddenly have a purpose, right? I lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. I'm really interested in what goes on with you, always finding different things to do. Self-seeking will slip away. I don't set it up so that I have to do that, so I get this. Self-seeking will slip away. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. It doesn't say you'll be rich. It says the fear of people and the fear of economic insecurity will leave us, and you know exactly what to do. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us, and that's because this channel to the power is cleared. It's cleared of wrong motive. It's cleared of wrong thinking. It's cleared of wrong believing. It's clear. So we have a channel to be inspired to do the next thing, or make the phone call, or show up where we don't think we need to be to find just the person that needed to talk, right? Both ways. I need you and you need me. We need each other desperately. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. We'll suddenly realize the importance of that powerful step 3 prayer that we made, where we committed to the discovery of having this as a partnership, a lifelong partnership with the power. So it says, are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, which is those of you who are in the beginning of this. You're starting to see them. People are starting to look at you. You can look people in the eye. You're starting to have an idea you never had before. So they're starting to take place in your life. You've planted the seeds, and here they start to come. Well, they really come when you finish this step. It says they will always materialize if we work for them, and that is the total promise. So that is the, I have to stop. So we're going to open it up for some comments, questions, and I just wanted to take the 9th step out of the big book tonight. So, who's got a comment, a question, an experience they'd like to share?